Hi, it's Toby Hazelwood here. What I'm going to be talking with you today about is the idea of when you fall off the wagon, when you fall off the horse, when you abandon or lose good habits, or when you're encountering some sort of difficulty or hardship or disagreement that knocks you off track. The idea of how important it is to simply pick up, dust yourself off, and pick up and start again. So I wrote a blog post right at the start of this year, something along the lines of quoting the famous adage, when you fall off the horse, you've got to get right back on again. So the idea there obviously is that there are many different ways in which you can react when something negative happens and something knocks you off track, whether that's that you've simply lost the practice of a good habit, or you've had some sort of bad news that's potentially knocked your confidence. Maybe you've had a disagreement with someone at work or with your partner, or you're in the process of breaking up a relationship, going through a divorce, and you've kind of had some difficult discussions and you're kind of losing your resolve, you're losing your will. What tends to happen, and it's all too easy to happen, it's something that happens repeatedly in my own life and something I'm trying to come to terms with and deal with and manage things a bit more consistently, is that quite often when something knocks you off track, there's a tendency you can either go one of two ways. You can either just take that as a temporary hit, an obstacle to overcome, or it can kind of gradually wear down your resolve such that eventually you kind of lose interest in all the good things you were doing and potentially stop following all the good practices that you'd built into your life, and that you gradually degrade, so you get further and further away from where you want to be, and consequently it actually gets more and more difficult to kind of get yourself back on track, because not only are you dealing with the fact that you've lost the good habits, but actually it seems all the more insurmountable to pick them back up again. And similarly, there's all the other elements that kind of feed into the way you feel about it, such as the loss of face you believe that you'll face with other people, or difficulties that you'll feel when you try and build those habits back into your life, because you've lost such ground. There's so many different examples here. My particular and personal example was in relation to my sort of observance of a regular habit of going to the gym. So I think last year, 2018, was probably the year in which I managed to maintain the most consistent focus on my health and well-being, which was, I kind of see that as one of the biggest achievements of my life. But, like most people, I started up at the gym, or most people coming back to health and fitness, I started up going to the gym in January, and I managed to maintain a pretty consistent habit right through to the end of June. But then, things took over. We got into the summer, perhaps my focus on going to the gym and punishing myself kind of waned a little bit, and I was a bit more interested in doing stuff with the kids or socialising or making the best of the great weather we had in the UK last summer. But also, I had a couple of injuries. My knees were starting to hurt, and at 42 years of age, I felt perhaps it was a sign that things were catching up with me. And my kind of regular 4 times a week gym habit started to become 3 times a week, then 2, and then the occasional visit every couple of weeks, and eventually it stopped altogether. And I guess, it wasn't done unknowingly. It wasn't that something happened and all of a sudden I realised I haven't been to the gym in ages. It actually was a gradual wearing down of my resolve and my kind of personal commitment and my spirit to doing the right thing and to continuing those good habits. And I have to say, towards the end of the year, I had a bit of a renewed focus. I picked up a copy of The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss, who's one of my favourite authors, and I'll put a link to that in the notes beneath this podcast or beneath this video, depending on what you're picking up. And it kind of introduced me to some new ideas which I built into my life over the last couple of months of the year. So it wasn't a kind of complete write-off. It wasn't 6 months of good going to the gym and then 6 months of abandon. But the net effect was, when it came around to January 1st, I was feeling demoralised. I was feeling miserable. I knew that I'd let myself down. I knew that I'd let my kind of wife and my family down. And, we had a bit of a health scare in our wider family over Christmas. And it kind of made me realise that actually I need to look after my health. I need to kind of take care of this. I'm not getting any younger. None of us are. But, I'm the wrong side of 40 now. And actually I need to maintain a positive and consistent focus on the routine preservation of my health and doing all the good things that I need to do to look after it. And so it was kind of crunch time, but it was that realisation that made me kind of get back on the horse and figure, right, I need to get back into this. And obviously the conclusion was I needed to go back to the gym and start building that into my life more regularly again. Now, obviously in the period from when I'd abandoned it to now, I'd gone through all sorts of different emotions, and I think that's the case regardless of what you've lost the habit of in your life. You tend to go through a number of different emotions on it. You start to beat yourself up, and you feel bad that you've let yourself down and you've let others down, and so you kind of gang up on yourself, if you like, and reinforce all the negativity that's in your mind about something that you probably already feel bad about. Then I tried to persuade myself I was actually happier without it. Why do I need to go to the gym? And kind of mocking the people that kind of whack on the lycra and their running shoes and get into the gym and sweat and feel uncomfortable and deal with the aches and pains afterwards. I started to think, well, maybe I'm better off without that. Of course, I'm saying that to make myself feel better. It's not that I genuinely believe that people who look after their health are worthy of mockery. And in fact, I probably was just jealous of the fact that they'd managed to carry on with the good habits and I hadn't. But the simple fact was, no matter how I looked at the situation, no matter whether I yearned for the fact to be back there or whether I felt bad on myself for having let the habit slip or whether I mocked the people that were carrying on doing it, there was really only ever going to be one thing that turned it around and that made me feel better about the situation and truly better in my heart, and that was to actually start to build those positive habits back in again. And so I think around 2nd of January, 3rd of January maybe, I dragged myself back into the gym, and I kind of knew there was going to be an element of, mockery. Here come the New Year's resolutionists, here come the people that have kind of decided this is the year for them, and I can't blame anyone if that was their opinion of me, simply because that is why I was there, to get back on the horse, to start building those habits in again. And if I had to nail one different thing in my mindset now about doing that this year rather than any other year that I've done it, it is that I've kind of resolved myself that this is going to be a year of building in more consistency. It's not about going to the gym 5 times in 1 week and, hammering down the protein shakes and throwing away all the carbs from your cupboard and all the rest of it. It's about building instead some sustainable and consistent habits for life. And that's what I intend to do. So whilst I think I did actually hit it a bit hard in the first week, I went 4 days in a row and then got chastised by the gym owner who observed me doing that and then sort of told me the errors of my ways and reminded me that I'm going to probably end up injured again if I carry on in that way. That was the start of me starting to go again and getting back on the horse. And actually, if I can just kind of get over that initial flush of enthusiasm and kind of maintain the benefits of going there and knowing that I'm doing the right thing, but start to do it in a more consistent manner, then that'll be how I build that into my life on a consistent basis. And consistency is key in all aspects of health. And I'm going to go on to another example in a minute, or another couple of examples. So don't tune out if you're not interested in gym and fitness and all those kinds of things. But the point is that no matter what the goal, there are many different ways in which you can contribute to achieving that goal. So in the fitness terms, it's about going to the gym and the regular exercise. But for me, it's also about, a healthy diet, not drinking as much alcohol, potentially investigating and exploring the use of some different dietary supplements to see if I can get a better kind of longevity out of my body, given that I feel like I am aging a bit and, more prone to aches and pains. And just generally building up the good habits. So gradually by layering the different things that I'm doing to contribute to that goal, I should see the results coming about. But, there was no layering until I took the first step. So really taking that first step is absolutely fundamentally key. No matter what you're doing, you have to take that first step and bite the bullet. And, if you think you're going to face mockery, then face the mockery. If you're feeling like you're going to have to overcome your inner resistance, then you have to find some way of doing that, because until you take that first step and until you climb back on the horse, then you're just sat in that same space where you'll be going through the cycles of negative emotion, negative feeling, judging yourself, doubting yourself, judging other people, none of which is helpful. And the only thing you can do is to actually get back on the horse. So I said there'd be some other examples, and the same thing applies no matter what kind of positive habits and practices you've perhaps let slip in your life. Some good examples and other examples, I guess, that are pertinent to the time of year around the holidays and coming back into the new year. You may have been brilliant at controlling your money and controlling your spending in life, and you may have had a good year of not overspending, saving some money, paying off your debts, and then all of a sudden Christmas comes around, or whatever holiday you observe, and maybe you have a bit of a splurge, or you have an argument with someone and you decide you're going to go out and make yourself feel better by treating yourself to something new. And that's fine, there's always a place for everything and a bit of moderation in all aspects of life. And sometimes you do have to treat yourself if you're working hard to make money. But, you know, the abandonment of good habits shouldn't be triggered by, you know, one minor blip. You know, if it's a blip that's unplanned, or even if it's something you've decided consciously you're going to go out and spend some money, it shouldn't necessarily then mean that you just figure, well, the next time you fancy something, or you see something you want to buy for yourself and you feel you need a treat, or you construct a reason why you feel you need to pick yourself up, you've got to make sure you don't break those good habits. And if you do break them, if you do find you have a bit of a bad month where you've spent more money than you earned, and you've used your credit card and aren't able to pay it off for the whole balance, for example, you don't just let yourself slip and slide down that slippery slope of failure, but instead actually you acknowledge what's happened. You kind of forgive yourself for the fact that it has happened. And you don't just kind of give up on it and think, well, that's that. But actually, instead, you get back on the horse. You pick up the good habits again, one by one. You know, if your challenge is money and overspending, then you start to build up the number of days where you don't spend unnecessarily, and you start to focus more again on your savings account and the amount of money you're building up in that, rather than the amount of nice things you have around you, nice bags or shoes or clothes or, you know, games, DVDs, whatever your passion is. You know, you don't just focus on those things, you focus on the good habits and the positive practices, and you build them up a bit at a time. And I guess the same thing would apply in a business context as well. You know, it's easy to be enthused by things when we're kind of writing new blogs, or we're creating new products, or we're, you know, forming relationships with new clients, and everything seems to be going in the right direction. You know, we're making money, we're making progress, we're growing as a person. But, you know, there's always going to be blips. There are always going to be times when things slow down. And if you view that slowing down as the kind of the end, you know, and you stop doing all the good things you were doing, you'll never really know if A, it's something you've done or something that's just going on around you that's caused the blip. And B, you're going to find it hard to know what you should be, you know, what actually was causing the results to come about in the first place. So, you know, if you were writing a blog once a week and then you reduce it to once every 2 weeks and then once per month, you know, you may see things slip, but that may not be the reason why your number of customers or your number of engagements slipped. But instead, there was something going on completely differently. But the key thing is, if you're doing the writing regularly, once a week in that example, that's a good habit to have in itself. And that's part and parcel of what's bringing you the results you desire. So if you let that habit slip, and you note that you've let it slip, you don't start to think to yourself, well, it probably wasn't making a difference anyway, and, you know, I don't really have any good ideas and no one wants to hear what I have to say. Instead, you actually get back on the horse and you pick up that good practice again. And I guess, you know, the final example maybe is in terms of the relationship side of life. You know, if you have an argument with your spouse, then, you know, the worst thing you can do is think, right, well, that's it, I hate them, I want to be apart from them, I want a divorce, or, you know, I don't want to be with them any longer. And you just start to gradually let your kindnesses towards them, your affection towards them, and all the good things that you do for them to gradually slip. Otherwise, you know, that relationship is going to be on a kind of downward spiral where there is no chance of saving it. Whereas, you know, if you recognise that you've had a bad month or a bad week, and maybe they've said some unpleasant things to you and you've said some unpleasant things to them, and it's all got a bit, you know, argumentative and agitated, you know, yes, that happens, but the worst thing you can do is to let that become the pattern and just, you know, undo all the strength of your relationship. Instead, you have the choice that you can actually acknowledge that that's happened, but recognise that you love them and that they love you, and that you want to kind of do everything that you can personally to make sure that relationship works. So, you know, pick up the good habits again, buy the flowers, you know, give them the compliment, make them the coffee, or bring them to a restaurant and treat them to a nice meal, obviously within your budget, as I've mentioned before. But the point is, you get back on the horse, you get back into that relationship, and you give it everything you've got. And if you're going through the parting of a relationship like a divorce, you know, the same thing holds true. You know, you have to have an enormous amount of resilience and consistency about how you respond to challenges and to difficulties and to upset. But you can't just let the negativity of the situation grind you down. You know, there will be times when you have a difficult discussion, or, you know, something has to be resolved via the lawyers, or you have an unpleasant conversation about how you're going to manage your kids, or any other aspect of divorce, or how you're going to deal with the money. That can be really challenging. It can break you at times, but what you can't do is let that kind of undo your resolve to get through the divorce and to be the best person you can be and build the best life possible as a result of it. You have to You have to gird yourself, and you have to build that resolve and that resilience to make sure that you're not just going to let things slide. And if you do have a difficult couple of days, have the difficult couple of days, indulge yourself, make yourself feel better, but then get back on with building the good habits. Don't allow the good habits to gradually slip away from you. Don't allow your resilience in that divorce scenario to fall away. Don't allow your belief that you're going to be fine and that your kids will be fine and that you're going to build a new and happy life where you're thriving and not just surviving. Don't lose that belief. Instead, take it for what it is. Take the blip for what it is, the difficult conversation, the argument, the unhappy discussion that you've had or whatever. It happens, but don't let it break you. Bring back the resilience and get back on the horse. There's a final sort of quote that I mention often, and it's from Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL commander, and it's something I've quoted in at least one other podcast episode, so forgive me, but it is one of my favourites, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's somewhere along the lines of Rome wasn't built in a day, and we all know that, but Rome also didn't fall apart in a day either. Good habits and the building of Rome happened as a result of one thing after another. 1 year of civilization in the Roman Empire followed by another, and things gradually got built up to making it the power that it was back in the Roman era. But similarly, it didn't fall apart overnight either. It didn't all just fall apart in the space of a year or whatever. It actually gradually declined and crumbled. More countries had their independence from Rome. More people realized there was a different way to life, and so the Roman Empire gradually fell apart as a result of lots of small degradings, small crumblings. And that's the same for any good practice or good habit we have in our life. We build them up as a result of the layers, the one thing upon another, the good habit built upon another good habit, and the positive mindset and the resilience and the action taking and being action oriented, and believing in ourselves and doing things to develop our mind and our body so that we're better able to cope with difficulty and hardship. But similarly, if we abandon those habits and those good practices, then we also run the risk of losing those things, and one by one they slip away, and then things get more and more difficult in our lives, and it also feels more and more difficult to pick up the good habits again. So I guess the key takeaway message for me from this is that if you do feel you're losing the good habits and the good practices, then don't despair. As soon as you recognize it, you have the choice to either do nothing about it or to get back on the horse. If you fall off, get back on the horse. Pick up that practice again. And even if it's been 6 months or a year or more, go back to the gym, get yourself back into the frame of mind where you're having a workout. Reach out to the relation or friend that you've not spoken to for years as a result of a difficult conversation. Tell your spouse you love them, and remind them of all the good things that your relationship has. Don't just dwell in the negative if you've had an argument. And if you are going through the breakup of a relationship, remind yourself you've got what it takes to get through this. You have the purpose, you have the resilience, and you have the mindset that, this isn't the end of your life, this is a new beginning, and you're actually going to come out of this stronger and better and living a better life. Get back on the horse. I hope you found that useful. If you feel willing to, I would love it if you could leave a like or a follow, subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. If you're happy to leave a review or a comment, a positive one hopefully, then please do. If you want to reach out to me and just talk about some of this or email me, then please feel free to do so. My email address details are accompanying the notes within this. I mentioned a book or two in the podcast and in the video, so I'll reference those in the notes. And in the meantime, I hope you're thriving and not just surviving. And until next time, I'll say goodbye. Goodbye.